The Taliban just built something that's shaking the entire region. Deep in northern Afghanistan, the desert now echoes with the sound of bulldozers carving a new man-made river, the Qosh Tepa Canal. It's 185 kilometers long, cutting through Balkh, Jawzjan, and Faryab, built without foreign help or international funding. What began in silence is now visible from space, a project so vast it's set to rewrite borders, feed millions, and change everything Afghanistan once depended on. This isn't a simple irrigation trench. It's a 285-kilometer-long artificial river, cutting through sand and stone to redirect the Amu Darya, one of Central Asia's oldest and most contested water sources. The goal is staggering in scale: move 10 billion cubic meters of water each year, roughly one-third of the river's total flow, and feed it into Afghanistan's barren north. For a country that has survived on food aid for decades, this canal could transform its future. The mission is crystal clear. The Taliban plan to convert 550,000 hectares of desert into fertile farmland, an area larger than the entire state of Delaware. The canal would bring permanent irrigation to regions that have never known reliable water. For the first time, northern Afghanistan could produce enough wheat, cotton, and vegetables to feed itself and to export the surplus across borders. The numbers sound impossible, but on-the-ground footage shows the progress is real. The total investment stands at $684 million, funded largely through internal revenues, regional deals, and resource taxes. That figure is tiny compared to Western megaprojects, yet the results are already visible. By 2025, the second phase was nearly complete. 90% of the earthworks done, the headworks 80% built, and the channel stretching farther each month toward the Amu Darya. Every week, thousands of tons of rock and sand are moved to shape a new artery of control. The canal's proportions are extreme. At some points, it's 100 meters wide and 10 meters deep, wide enough to fit multiple highways side by side, deep enough to swallow a 3-story building. Engineers compare it to the largest irrigation systems on Earth. In aerial footage, the structure looks like a man-made canyon snaking through the desert. It's one of the few modern projects whose scale can be measured from space, but the geography is brutal. The canal crosses landscapes where summer temperatures reach 50 degrees Celsius, and sandstorms can bury equipment within hours. The soil here is porous and thirsty. Every drop of water wants to vanish into the ground. Early field tests showed seepage losses of up to 15% per kilometer, a nightmare for hydrologists. Soviet engineers tried similar desert projects in the 1970s and failed repeatedly. To counter this, new methods are being used. Local crews and imported specialists have layered the canal walls with clay polymer compounds designed to reduce leakage. Excavators carve through dunes while tankers spray water to keep the dust down. Each day, 2,000 machines move across the route. Excavators, graders, cement mixers, all working in synchronized shifts. When night falls, floodlights ignite across the desert, keeping the work continuous. Bridges and headworks rise every few kilometers, concrete frames emerging from dunes that once held nothing but wind. These structures will regulate flow, allowing engineers to direct water into feeder canals that spread through multiple provinces. The precision is military-like. Every span and culvert is mapped, reinforced, and timed. The Taliban call it a national lifeline. To outside observers, it looks like an engineering campaign executed with unrelenting focus. What this canal represents goes beyond irrigation. It marks a fundamental shift in Afghanistan's balance of power. For decades, the country depended on imports of wheat and aid shipments from Pakistan, Iran, and the United Nations. Now, by diverting a third of the Amu Darya, Afghanistan is seizing control of the one resource that defines Central Asia: water. Once operational, this single project will increase the nation's irrigated farmland by about 33%. That statistic alone is enough to change the regional map. Food security becomes leverage, crops mean revenue, and the river that once symbolized dependence now becomes a weapon of diplomacy. Downstream, alarm bells are ringing. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan rely on the same river for their cotton and grain industries, which support millions of jobs. Experts warn their water intake could drop 15 to 20% or more during dry seasons once the canal begins operating. For Uzbekistan, that threatens a $1.2 billion cotton economy. For Turkmenistan, it risks entire harvests. The Amu Darya no longer ends at their borders. It begins with a gate that Afghanistan now controls. Afghanistan was never part of the Soviet-era water-sharing treaty that allocates the Amu Darya's flow among Central Asian republics. That absence now gives Kabul unprecedented freedom. While its neighbors must report withdrawals and abide by quota systems dating back to the 1980s, the Taliban can divert water without legal constraint. For the first time, the upstream country holds all the cards. This changes every negotiation. Where once Afghanistan pleaded for development aid, it can now demand trade concessions in exchange for water stability. Diplomats call it the infrastructure flip. Water is no longer just a life source, it's geopolitical currency. Whoever controls the flow controls the future of Central Asia's farmlands. Beneath Afghanistan's mountains lies a fortune large enough to change the world. Geological surveys going back to Soviet times estimated over $1 trillion in untapped mineral wealth. Lithium for batteries, copper for electronics, and rare earth elements used in everything from fighter jets to smartphones. For decades, this treasure stayed locked away by war and corruption. But since 2021, a quiet race has begun. The new rulers of Kabul are treating minerals as the foundation of power, and their strategy is unfolding with remarkable speed. Since taking control, the regime has issued over 205 mining contracts to more than 150 companies across multiple provinces. Each contract means excavators, security teams, and local hiring drives. In places where foreign troops once fought, drilling rigs now operate around the clock. Official data shows mining has become one of Afghanistan's fastest growing industries. Copper, iron, zinc, and gold, resources that once left illegally, are now being taxed, cataloged, and funneled into state accounts. The deals are not small. In 2023, contracts valued above $6.5 billion were signed, covering strategic metals and precious ores. Chinese, Iranian, Pakistani, and even Russian-backed consortiums are on the list. Some of the biggest involve copper extraction in Logar, iron in Herat, and zinc in Takhar. Each project comes with new roads, temporary power stations, and logistics bases, physical symbols of a government trying to turn natural wealth into national infrastructure. The logic is simple. Every ton of metal pulled from Afghan soil funds something else being built on its surface. Revenue from copper and coal feeds directly into canal construction, road repairs, and power line expansion. It's an economic loop designed to make the country less dependent on foreign aid. The Qosh Tepa Canal itself plays a hidden role in this plan. With reliable irrigation, regions that were once unstable desert zones can now host mines and processing plants safely. Stable water means stable labor, stable roads, and a reason for foreign engineers to return. Regional investors are watching closely. The canal doesn't just irrigate crops, it irrigates confidence, infrastructure attracts financing, and financing creates alliances. The Taliban's economic offices are quietly presenting the canal and new city projects as proof of capability. They're telling neighboring countries Afghanistan can now protect assets, deliver resources, and move goods across borders without foreign oversight. The strategy ties water, minerals, and mobility into one equation. Each complements the other. The canal provides life to the land. The minerals provide cash to the treasury. And the new trade corridors, railways, pipelines, and highways provide routes to global markets. Together, They form a network that could permanently shift Central Asia's trade geography. The scale of these linkages is unprecedented. The canal aligns with the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the Trans-Afghan Railway, and the Tapi gas pipeline. Every one of these projects intersects Afghan territory, turning it from a battlefield into a bridge. China's western provinces gain faster access to the Arabian Sea. Pakistan secures transit fees and energy routes. Afghanistan stands at the center, collecting tolls. And political leverage. Once the canal begins delivering water, Kabul gains something even more valuable than revenue: negotiating power. Agricultural production will rise, creating exports that cross into Central Asia, while control of river flow grants leverage over downstream states. Water becomes the new diplomacy. Trade officials in Tashkent and Ashgabat already describe the canal as a structural threat to their supply chains, but the construction continues at full pace. Without firing a bullet, the regime has discovered a pressure point that can reshape alliances. Downstream nations that rely on the Amu Darya must now coordinate with Kabul or risk drought. For the first time, Afghanistan has something others need, and that dependence changes everything. It's not ideology or religion driving this power shift. It's concrete, water, and steel. Observers inside international agencies note another transformation: legitimacy through results. The government isn't winning loyalty through speeches, but through visible progress. Roads that didn't exist 2 years ago now connect mining zones to border crossings. Entire districts that once depended on aid convoys now have irrigation pumps. The message spreading through the provinces is that authority equals output. Build, govern, transform. That has become the unspoken policy. Western analysts describe the new challenge as non-military, but strategic. There are no tanks or aircraft here, only excavators, pipelines, and trade routes. Yet these can accomplish what 2 decades of warfare couldn't: long-term influence across Central Asia. Washington's intelligence assessments have begun to note that control of resources and transit corridors can neutralize military advantage. Infrastructure is emerging as the new form of power projection. This brings the world to 2 possible outcomes, both carrying consequences beyond Afghanistan's borders. The first future is one of completion. By 2028, if the canal and allied infrastructure are finished, Afghanistan could achieve full food independence. Exports of grain, fruit, and minerals would flow through rail lines into Pakistan, Iran, and China. Revenue from transit fees and mining royalties would stabilize the economy. The government would gain bargaining power in every regional negotiation. Recognition might follow not from diplomacy, but from necessity. The second future is collapse. If engineering flaws cause water losses, if drought intensifies, or if downstream retaliation begins, the same projects that promise stability could trigger a crisis. Environmental backlash could drain the canal, erode farmlands, and spark refugee movements. A failed canal would undermine the government's image of control and invite renewed internal conflict. In that case, instability wouldn't stay within Afghan borders. It would travel with every displaced farmer seeking food and safety northward into Central Asia and westward toward Iran. Europe. Either path leads to one outcome for the United States and its allies: diminishing influence. A functioning Afghan economic bloc aligned with Beijing and Moscow would sideline Western leverage for a generation. A failing one would demand emergency interventions, humanitarian aid, and regional security missions that Washington no longer wants to fund. Both futures remove the old balance of control. The numbers behind this transformation are small compared to the scale of their effect. A $684 million canal, less than the cost of one modern fighter squadron, has the potential to alter trade flows worth hundreds of billions. Mineral contracts of $6.5 billion could reorient industrial supply chains that feed into China's manufacturing ecosystem. And a country once dependent on aid convoys could soon dictate water policies to its neighbors. Infrastructure has replaced weaponry as the new currency of dominance. Instead of troops, there are surveyors. Instead of military bases, there are concrete plants. The outcome will redraw maps and alliances more quietly than any war. The water will start moving within 3 years. The trade routes will follow. And the question hanging over every capital from Washington to Beijing is simple. When the rivers of Central Asia start flowing on new terms, who will truly be in control?